Top interview question answers in .NET. 1. What is .NET? Even technical interviews will kick off with an icebreaker question or two, and this is a good example of one. The answer to this question is short and sweet, so you may want to throw in an interesting detail, like how long you've been using the .NET framework, that could lead to a conversation about your past experience and expertise. To answer this question, you can discuss how .NET is a framework that people use to develop, run, and deploy software. The .NET framework has three primary components, including Common Language Runtime, ASP.NET, and framework classes. 2. How many languages does .NET support? This question is designed to see if you know and understand the flexibility that .NET makes available for programmers and the companies that employ them. You will want to mention that .NET supports over 60 languages, and if it fits in your answer, don't hesitate to mention how this has benefited you and/or a past employer. 3. How can .NET support so many languages? .NET uses Microsoft Intermediate Language, MSIL. The code this produces is referred to as managed code, and that is what you run within a .NET ecosystem. The compilation process removes the barrier that would otherwise exist had the code not been remade into MSIL. 4. How is ASP.NET different from ASP? ASP.NET was created by Microsoft to enable dynamic web apps, but ASP is a server-side technology used to make web pages. Also, ASP.NET produces compiled code, while ASP produces interpreted code. Another difference is that ASP.NET is fully object-oriented, but ASP is only partially object-oriented. 5. How are Trace and Debug different? Debug and Trace are tools used in software development. Debug is a tool for debugging software that you build, and Trace is a tool that can be used with both debug and release builds. Since Trace offers both features, some people gravitate toward it to debug their solutions instead of using two separate tools to complete the same task. 6. How are system text.string builder and system string different? The main difference is that system text.string builder can be changed while system string is immutable. Even in languages, such as VB, where a system string can be changed, internally any changes result in a new copy of the system string. This isn't the case with system text.string builder, which makes it more performant. System text.string builder also incorporates a number of string manipulation methods that aren't available with system string. 7. How are namespace and assembly different from each other? A namespace is used to group classes, while an assembly physically groups logical units. Plus, you can use a namespace across more than one assembly. 8. How do int and int32 differ from each other? This is somewhat of a trick question because there isn't a real difference between int and int32. When you answer this question, you can mention that int is merely an alias for int32. 9. How are session objects and application objects different? A session object is used for maintaining a user's session, while an application object maintains use for an entire application. In other words, after a session ends, a session object would no longer be useful, a new one would have to be created when the next session begins. With an application object, the object carries through from one session to the next within the same application. 10. How are hash tables and array lists different? A hash table keeps data as a value pair and name, but an array list only stores values. You're also required to pass a name if you want to access a value within a hash table. For an array list, you need to pass an index number to access a value. In addition, you can store different kinds of data types in a hash table, but in an array, only similar data types can be stored. 11. What are the benefits of using session? The benefits of using session include the following. Session is secure because the session object is stored on the server, making it harder for a malicious actor to access it. Implementing and storing objects is straightforward in session. Session can store user data individually and separately from that of others. Session can store user data and states in various places around the application. 12. What are the drawbacks of using session? Because session data gets stored in the server's memory, you can experience excessive performance overhead if you have a lot of users. There's also the danger of overhead when you're serializing and deserializing your session data. If you want to give an example when answering this question, you can illustrate the challenge of limited server memory by outlining the impact of X number of users, each performing actions that require an average of Y amount of memory. Then describe how this could cause a problem given the server's available memory. If you've encountered a situation like this on a past project, be sure to discuss that and how you manage the issue. This can show your prospective employer that you have experience handling these types of real-world problems. 13. What is the meaning of MSIL? MSIL is the abbreviation for Microsoft Intermediate Language. It is used to provide the instructions required for operations such as memory handling, exception handling, and more. It can also provide instructions to initialize and store values and methods easily. The next .NET interview question involves an important concept. 14. What is CTS? The acronym CTS stands for Common Type System, which encompasses a predefined set of systematic regulations dictating the proper definition of data types in relation to the values provided by a user. Its primary purpose is to characterize and encompass all the various data types utilized within a user's application. Nevertheless, it is also permissible for users to construct custom calls using the guidelines established by the CTS. This feature is primarily provided to accommodate the diverse range of programming languages that can be employed when working within the .NET framework. 15. What is CLS? CLS stands for Common Language Specification in .NET. It is put into place to ensure that the application developer is capable of interlanguage operations if required. It is a reusable aspect among all the .NET compatible languages. 16. What does CLR stand for in .NET? CLR stands for Common Language Runtime. It forms to be the most vital component of .NET as it provides the foundation for many applications to run on. If a user writes an application in C#, it gets compiled and converted to intermediate code. After this, CLR takes up the code and works on it with respect to the following aspects: memory management, security protocols, libraries for loading, thread management. 17. How does managed code execute in the .NET framework? There are 4 main steps that include in the execution of the managed code. They are as follows. 1. Choosing a compiler that can execute the code written by a user. 2. Conversion of the code into intermediate language, IL, using a compiler. 3. IL gets pushed to CLR, which converts it into native code using JIT. 4. Native code is now executed using the .NET runtime. 18. What is the meaning of state management in .NET? State management, as the name suggests, is used to constantly monitor and maintain the state of objects in the runtime. A web page or a controller is an object. There are 2 types of state management. Client-side, it is used to store information on the client's machine and is formed mostly of reusable and simple objects. Server-side, it stores the information on the server and makes it easier to manage and preserve the information on the server. 19. What is the meaning of LINQ? LINQ is the abbreviated form of Language Integrated Query. It was first brought out in 2008, and it provides users with a lot of extra features when working with the .NET framework. One highlight is that it allows the users to manipulate data without any dependency on its source. 20. What is an assembly in .NET? An assembly is the simple collection of all of the logical units present. Logical units are entities that are required to build an application and later deploy the same using the .NET framework. It can be considered as a collection of executables and DLL files.